Welcome back. In this step, we would look at one complex scenario which is related to the scope. What we want to find out is what would happen if bean is of a scope of singleton. So there is only one instance of the binary search IMPL. But the dependency, so the sort algorithm instances, for example, if they are prototype, what would happen in that kind of a situation? That's what we would want to find out. To keep things really separate, what we'll do is we'll create a new example for this. Let's create a new Java class. Let's assume this is something which is present in a DAO, DAO, data access object. That's your data layer. Let's just call this a person DAO, person DAO or person DAO, whichever way you'd want to call this. And this is a class, and I would actually have a simple auto wiring in here. So I'll do at auto wired, and I would want to auto wire a JDBC connection in. So I'll say JDBC connection, JDBC connection. It doesn't matter. We are going to create an instance of this class anyway. And the other thing I want to do is this is a component which is managed. So let's put add component on it, and let's press Control 1 or Command 1, import this in. Control 1 here, import this in. Again, Control 1. It says the class does not exist. Go ahead and create it. Please do create it for me. That's cool. So I have a JDBC connection class in here. What I'll do is I'll create a simple constructor. So public JDBC connection, and I don't really do anything lot in here. I just do a sysout and say JDBC connection. Cool. And the other thing I would need to tell is I want Spring to manage this. I would want Spring to create a bean for this. How do I tell that? Add component, let's put that in. Now it's auto wired in. That's cool. All that I would need to do now is to generate the getters and setters. So I'll say generate getters and setters. Right click source, generate getters and setters. And let's select this. Okay, so now we have the setters and getters for this specific thing. One of the things I realized right now is the fact that we are having a lot of classes in the same package, and that's not really good, right? So let's kind of try and separate these things out. What I'll start with is the one class which we created just now, so the JDBC connection as well as the person DAO. We are trying to discuss about scope in here, so I'll change them to a package.scope. You can press Control 1 or Command 1 and say move person DAO to that package. And the same thing in the case of JDBC connection also. I would want to move this to a package called scope. Control 1, oops, Command 1, move it to the package, and that's cool. If you have any problems, you have to just organize the inputs and you should not have any problems anymore. So that's cool. So that's the scope example. I'll also want to move these stuff down to the basic example package. So I'll say dot basic binary search IMPL. I'm moving it to the basic package, and I'll do the same thing with these three things as well, so that those are all the basic examples which we are making use of. Just keep continuing it and say okay. It doesn't really matter. All that you need to do at the end of the whole thing is just go here and say right click, source, organize imports, or you can press Command Shift O, Control Shift O actually, and then all your problems should disappear away. I'll go to the Spring in 5 steps application, do a Control Shift O again here, and now we are all good. So now all the basic examples are present in here. The example which we are creating for scope is present in here. Now I would rename this. So this is basic application, right? So this is the one which we are using to test the basic stuff. So I'll call this Spring in 5 steps basic application. The shortcut I have used is Alt Shift R, and I've also said to rename the test which is present in here to basic application test. We have not really used the test until now. We'll use the test a little later, but for now we are good. So what we have done is a little bit of refactoring. I really like to keep our examples very clean so that we can focus on each thing at a time. So now when I want to see the things related to scope, I can go to scope and see the two important things that are related to scope. And I'll create a Spring in 5 steps scope application. So I'm copying the basic application, Control C, Control V, and I'm renaming this to scope application. Over here in the scope application, we don't really worry about the other stuff we created earlier. So all that we would want to do is get the application context. That's something which we want to keep doing. However, here we would want to get an instance of the DAO class, right? So I'm not worried about the basic things anymore. Let's get into the scope. So I would need to get an instance of the person DAO class. So here I would want to say person DAO, and the thing which would come back is a person DAO. So I'll say person DAO. I can remove all the code that is beneath it. Let's do that and press Ctrl+1, import it out. Okay, now this is cool. Now what we are trying to do is play around with prototype and singleton, right? So let's create two instances of person DAO. Until now we had been doing logging using sysout, and that's not really good, right? You would ideally want to use a logger. So let's do that. So I'll say logger is equal to, I would want to use this in here, so I'll make this static actually, because I would want to use it in the static public static void main. In the main it's a static method, so it needs to be static. I'll also put private static logger, and because it's a static I would need to rename it. Should be logger log factory dot get logger factory dot get logger. Let's import this in. Let's Ctrl+1, logger factory org slf4j. We'll use slf4j for the logging, and import org.slf4j logger as well. So be careful about the imports. It's org slf4j logger, org slf4j logger factory, and over here I would want to use this specific class. I can say this dot class. So now we have a logger present in here. I can use up the logger to log the stuff I would want to the output. So logger dot info, and what is the thing I would want to print in is this and person DAO, and after that I'll print the person DAO too. That's cool. What this does is it would replace whatever is in within this stuff. It will be replaced by person DAO. So person DAO too. Now I also want to print what is the JDBC connection inside them. So first I'll print JDBC connection for the person DAO at the bottom. So I'll say dot get JDBC connection and dot get JDBC connection. One of the things which we'll need to remember is the fact that as of now we have not really put any annotations related to scope on either the JDBC connection or the person DAO. So what is the default scope that they would get? They would get a singleton scope, right? So let's run this and see what happens. So it's printing it out, and let's see what's present in here. So person DAO, both instances are the same. You can see that the address for them are same, and also the same instance of the JDBC connection is being used. So that's pretty cool, right? So this is exactly as we expected. Now let's go to the person DAO and make the scope for this as prototype. Configurable bean factory, Ctrl+1. Let's import the scope first. Import it in configurable bean factory. Oops, it's not coming up. Configurable bean factory dot. I would want to use a scope of prototype. Now let's run this right now. The DAO being used is different. So the person DAO is different. It has a different ID. However, the JDBC connection, if you look at it, is the same. That's cool, because the JDBC connection, we have actually left it. There is no scope on it. Default is singleton. That's cool. Now, the example that we really wanted to discuss in here, so this is using the scope. So I'll remove the scope from here. So this is now using the default scope. However, I would want you to use a new JDBC connection every time. So I would say add scope configurable bean factory dot scope of prototype. So I'm saying person DAO, I would want to use the same instance every time. However, the JDBC connection, I would want different instances each time. So let's see what would happen now. Let's run this program. Okay, you can see that I'm getting the same instance for person DAO, but also the same instance for JDBC connection. So even though I'm trying to get the JDBC connection, I would want it to be a prototype. I'm not really getting different instances of it. The reason is because we are actually trying to get the person DAO. So in the application, we are trying to retrieve person DAO, and the person DAO is directly getting the JDBC connection. It's having one instance of it and it's happy with it. It does not still realize the fact that JDBC connection is a prototype. If we really want to have a different instance of the JDBC connection, whenever we have a request for person DAO, then we would need to configure something called a proxy. So what we need to do is, instead of directly giving it a JDBC connection, we need to give it a proxy. And the proxy would make sure that it gets a new instance of the JDBC connection each time. So how do I configure a proxy in here? You need to add an additional attribute in here. And when we want to add an additional attribute to the annotation, what I need to start first is, for the first one, I need to say value is equal to this. And now I can say proxy mode is equal to, there's a class called scoped proxy mode. So let's use that. I imported it in here. So control space, scope proxy mode dot, the one which I would want to use is something called target class. What it does is, in all the places where this JDBC connection is used, it would start using the proxy, and thereby whenever there's a request, whenever there's a get on this, it would make sure that there's a new JDBC connection being used. So let's now run this. Now you can see that the person DAO is the same. However, we have two different instances of JDBC connection. In this video, we wanted to show you an example of the proxy. So whenever you are trying to get a bean and one of its dependencies is a prototype, then on the dependency we should use a proxy. So we should use a proxy so that whenever we try to get a bean and try to get the dependency, we would get a new instance of the dependency. Most important things that you need to understand is the fact that whenever we are trying to program, we are trying to create as less number of objects as possible. If we create more objects, then they would occupy more memory, and also there would be more pressure on garbage collection and things like that. So you would want to keep the number of objects that are created to a minimum. I could have easily made this a prototype and created one instance of person DAO for every request, but that would defeat the purpose of keeping the number of objects, number of instances very low. So in this video, what we looked at is, when a dependency, when one of the dependencies is a prototype, however the bean using that is not a prototype, how do you do that? We saw that we would solve that by using a proxy. Until the next step, bye bye.